Is the Big 12 the most interesting conference in college football? We're going to talk about that more today on our show. Welcome on in, welcome on in. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're listening in to from or watching. This is the Cardinal Companion coming to you live, or not live, pre-recorded on YouTube. I'm here, Josh, with my friend
James.
James. How you doing, James?
Doing good.
Good. I love to hear that. So we have a little bit of a different show today. It's late June, early July. It's kind of that preview season, your primer season. You start going, to your Walgreens. You're seeing your Phil Still, you're seeing your Athlon, all that good stuff in the magazine sections. We're kind of getting to that point where we can finally start talking ball. Doesn't it feel great?
It can't get here soon enough. I think we're at 62 days the time of recording this from week one, so it's 55 days from week zero. Can't
Yeah.
get here soon enough.
And the fun thing with week zero, the conference we're talking about today, we're talking about the Big 12. We got a pretty big matchup week zero, don't we?
You get Kansas State at Iowa versus Iowa State in Dublin.
I know you got a little Farmageddon in Ireland. The world's going crazy. The world's going crazy. But kind of like what we were talking about there, we are talking a little bit of Big 12 today. Me and James, we went through, we kind of highlighted a couple of things in the conference. We've done a preseason ranking for these teams. We got some players to watch, all that good stuff. My one little disclaimer for this video, though. This video is being recorded on June 20th. Do not use this video as an in-season preview for teams, and do not come at us telling us we were so wrong, because this is a preview show. This is not a projection show. There's a big difference in those two things. But yeah, it's going to be fun conference. It's going to be a very fun conference. The way that I look at this, and I don't want people to take this as like me throwing shade at the Big 12, James, but this is a fun league, but it's so hard to kind of try to predict this league. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, and I think that falls back on most of the conferences' recruiting principles. If you actually look at like their high school recruiting and transfer portal, they all rank similarly, like throughout. They all have a similar like strength of schedule, which just begs for a very you can lose any given week to any given team. The 12th team isn't that much different than the two team, but it's very tossy turvy league, and like the middle tier teams is closer to the top than it would be the bottom. I think it's clear there's a bottom section of the conference, but it gives you a lot of good football. Like there's gonna be a lot of good close games. It's a little bit different than what it used to be. It's not as offensive heavy. Defense is becoming more prevalent throughout. I think Houston's gonna have a decent defense this year.
I agree with you. I think the Big 12 gets a lot of flack a lot of the time, simply because when you look at this conference and compare it to, your ACC, CC, Big Tens, there's all like very, very strong teams in those conferences. You have your Georgias, your Texases, Ohio States, Oregons, Clemsons, and there's not one of those in this conference. Now, there's very good football teams. Don't get me wrong. There are teams that are good football teams, but they might be good in, that 15 to 20 cents and not, in that top 5 to top 10 cents. It's a fun league. And, that's the only problem with this league is just, it's not super top heavy. And that's obviously, just typical sports media. That's what we all look at. We all look at the best teams, and there we saw it last year where one of these teams they can compete. I mean, you look at Arizona State last year; they were in that game in the college football playoff. I mean, they didn't win, but they were in it. They look like they deserve to be on the field, and luckily for the Big 12 this year, there's a lot of opportunities, especially early on in the season in cross conference, where they can kind of stake their claim as we belong because of X result. But I guess the first little thing I want to get into and we'll talk about is a couple of games to watch in this conference. So, just for the viewers, me and James, we both have different little documents that we kind of highlighted things on. So, we'll both be going back and forth. And then you'll have a little snippet of these games also clipped here at the bottom of the screen if you want to follow along. But the first one that I have, and we've already kind of talked about it, but that's Farmageddon. That's Ireland, Kansas State, Iowa State on August 23rd. I mean, everyone in the country is going to be watching it. It's your first real game back. And even with that being said, it's a really good game. It's a top 25 matchup.
I have one that you mentioned chances to prove yourself now the conference. You got Colorado hosting a very good Georgia Tech team.
Mm-hmm.
It's week one, week two. It's very early, but that's your chance to solidify Colorado as a threat very early. That Georgia Tech team has a chance to win 9 or 10 games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, along that line, you also have Kansas and Missouri, September 6th. I don't think Kansas wins that game, but that's a very good indicator because Missouri, they're top 20 good. They're a good team. They're going to be middle of the pack SEC, and if the Big 12 can win a game like that, then that just solidifies you so much at the end of the season when you're trying to get multiple teams in the CFP. You also have Pittsburgh at West Virginia on September 13th. Now I know that game, that's the backyard brawl. It's a little bit different. I wouldn't Yes, we do put stock into it, but you can only put so much stock in it being such of a heated rivalry. And the same thing for, SMU at TCU on September 20th.
I think the first big game, it's going to be able to, you can kind of start seeing how the conference is going to go throughout the year.
BYU, they're one of the weird teams in the conference where I've seen them get some top 15 love, and then I've seen other pollsters and projection services have no love for them at all. If you're BYU, the one thing you think about is you're bringing back the core of your offense. You're bringing back Retzlaff, you're bringing back Roberts, Martin, all on your offense, which they're gonna run that same balanced offense that they've always ran. I mean, for them though, it's just you got to prove it on the defense. You just have to because it wasn't there like you needed it to be last season. Luckily, though, they bring back Jack Kelly, which always helps because he's more their like signal caller on the defense. But no, it's a one to watch. And then another, just my last one for like Big 12 specifically. Watch out for this Texas Tech and Arizona State game on October 18th because that'll determine a lot of how this conference goes. Because I think both those teams will probably be fighting for a spot in their championship game. But I think
Yeah.
the biggest thing for the Big 12, and again, this isn't me trying to disparage the Big 12 at all, but you just have to prove that you're worthy of multiple CFP slots this year. Because last year was kind of an embarrassment on a national scale for the Big 12. I mean, there was a point in the season where we didn't think a Big 12 would get an auto bid because of Boise State. If you don't remember that, where it got to that point where it's like, well, wait a second, these guys they're in the mid-20s, and
You had
it was
Boise State and Army right there.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, if Army wins that Notre Dame game, it's a very different offseason for the entire Big 12, I feel like. So yeah, that's just a little bit about that. We'll roll into do you have some players to watch?
There's a team I have to watch. Like,
Oh,
so Kansas last year, I don't know if anybody followed Kansas. Kansas started off really slow. I think they lost maybe 5 of their first 6 games. In their last 6 games, they beat BYU, they beat Arizona State, they beat all the top, Colorado. I'm pretty sure I thought they beat them. But they bring back all their offensive production. If Jalen Daniels is healthy with that wide receiver core, and they brought back, I'm pretty sure the running back came back too. Like that offense, they bring back 62% of their offense, and the defense, which struggled at times last year, got a complete overhaul as they only brought back 50% of their production. And they had the 42nd strength of schedule in the country, so it's a little bit easier of a schedule than what they had last year. So you could see Kansas as like a 7-8 win team, if not better, depending on how things shake out.
yeah, and I like you already hit on it, but the big thing you have to watch there is Jalen Daniels has to stay healthy.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. What I really like though is there's a couple of all conference guys on that offensive line that they're bringing back as well, which is that's what you need to keep them healthy. They did have a hard time getting pressure on the quarterback last season. One thing that they did is they rebuilt, like when you were talking about them rebuilding their defense, they primarily rebuilt their secondary, in my opinion. So the defensive line core and that front five is still there where you should be able to get consistent pressure. And one would think if they get their consistent pressure, then they should be fine. That at least that's the way I look at it.
I also think there is a team that's very interesting, and it's very hard.
Yeah, you're good.
It's very hard to rank them. Rich Rod's back at West Virginia.
Yep.
Which in terms, I think they lost like 40 players, but they brought in a bunch of people back in the transfer portal. So that team's hard to predict like what they're going to be. They could be a team that you're looking at bottom 5 of the conference, but with Rich Rod, you never know. They could randomly be up there in the top 5.
No, yeah, I agree. And what I had kind of highlighted when I was looking at West Virginia is obviously they're going to get more of a spotlight in the conference because of bringing back Rich Rod. Rich Rod is Rich Rod. This is a Louisville page. We all know who Rich Rodriguez is. What I love though is Rich Rod, he has that weird spread run offense thing. It works really well, but it's kind of weird. He's been doing it now for I guess 20 years. They're bringing back Jaheim White. And I really think Jaheim White is one of the best running backs in this conference. And it could work well. Last season we had Arizona State. They're picked to finish last in the Big 12. And, obviously they won the league and they went to the college football playoff. If there's a team at the bottom of the standings, I think that could do that, it would be this West Virginia squad. They spent a lot of money in the transfer portal, man. They spent a lot. They brought in guys like Jamori Robinson. He was an all AAC. He was the AAC Defensive Player of the Year. He's a great edge rusher. So, if they can just get their defense together, and they do play a little bit more of a difficult Big 12 schedule, but if they can get their defense together and the Rich Rod thing can do the Rich Rod thing on offense, then watch out for that team because they could make a big impact very
They
quickly.
are a team that has a weaker than normal. You take Pitt out, their
Mhm.
strength of schedule probably goes down to like 90, but with
Oh,
Pitt
okay.
it's 68.
Okay.
So I think they may act, but they did lose a lot. Like, I'll give you this terms: they're losing 37%. They're returning 37% of their offensive production and only 22% of that defense.
Yeah.
So they're basically a whole new team.
Yeah.
So it's hard to predict them.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know. It's gonna be fun to watch, and the whole thing. That's the one thing I will say with the Big 12. It's a very fun league to watch,
Yeah,
and it always comes in with storylines. The past 2 years, but 2 years, it's been dominated by the Deion Sanders talk, and with Deion, I don't. That's a whole different conversation in Colorado because they're a weird team to gauge this year anyway because they're losing so much.
they
You
got
know
a
what I
lot of
mean?
freshmen.
Yeah, it's a lot of freshmen, very talented freshmen,
Mm-hmm.
might I add, but it's a lot of freshmen. For me, though, just a few players to watch, and I'm just going to kind of go rapid fire here. Sam Levitt, quarterback at Arizona State, he's a legitimate Heisman contender. Just want to throw that out there, start that talk now. I'll take Corleone, and your D lineman from Cincinnati. Dude's an absolute brick wall. He posted the highest PFF average for interior D linemen last year. He's going to be a day one draft pick. DJ McKinley from Colorado, cornerback. He's a lockdown corner, and he has the physical traits to go up against anyone in the Big 12. Chase Roberts, the BYU wide receiver, he's a really solid possession wide receiver, good hands. He's strong, he has size, and he has a really good route running ability. He could be pretty good in that Cougars offense. Connor Wegman, the transfer from Texas A&M, he's a quarterback now over at Houston. He's one of the better transfer portal pools for the Big 12 this cycle. For him, he has the tools, he has the physical abilities. He just lacked poise. And, I'm not trying to sound shitty when I say this, but there's a big difference in playing at Alabama compared to playing at, a school like Kansas. Those,
He just had
those,
a.
those
I think he had.
environments are very different.
I think he had a patience issue.
Yeah.
He goes back to that first game of last year when they played Notre Dame. It felt like at the early of the game, it was fine. Like he was making his passes, but late game when it mattered more, he was rushing the ball, and you could tell in the way Notre Dame's defense was able to just pin their ears back.
Yeah, I really think the slowdown in the slow again, I'm not trying to sound crappy when I say this on the Big 12, but the slowdown of the game is going to really help him in this league. Another guy we got another quarterback from the transfer portal, Kadon Slater from Liberty. He's going to be quarterback over at Colorado this year. Kid, he's good. I've watched him a lot. Liberty, they've been kind of a high point of college football over the past 2 seasons. He has really, he's a really good dual threat. I'm really interested to see how Dion uses him. He wears a really weird helmet though. That's the one thing I always think about when I think about him. He's one of those helmets that like juxtapose off the forehead. But that'll be different to see how Dion's able to use like a true dual threat in this system. And then, just three more guys here. Jordan Dyer, he was one of another really good transportal pickup. He's going to be the wide receiver out of TCU. He was out Idaho last year, and he was probably the best wide receiver in FCS. Like he had an insanely good year. We already talked about him. Jaheim White, West Virginia running back. He's a dog. And then the final one, Jacob Rodriguez, Texas Tech interior linebacker. And their whole defense is going to run through them. And if Texas Tech wants to be good, that defense has to be good.
I like to add one,
Okay.
Jordan Tyson.
Yep.
Um, hey, you said Levitt's Heisman. Tyson's going to be a big part of that if he does win Heisman. I think Tyson may be the best wide receiver in the conference at his best. If they can keep him healthy and give Levitt time, he's an excellent route runner, and he has some breakaway speed on the streak routes.
Absolutely. So now we're going to go down. We're gonna reveal our rankings, and we're gonna talk a little bit about our rankings of our two teams.
Well, that's
All right, so now we have both of our rankings pulled up. Sorry for the presentation; it doesn't look all that great, but a little bit of a different list here for me and James. We're going to start at the bottom and we're going to work our way up. The first team we have down there at 16 is Central Florida. James, what are you thinking about Central Florida this year?
Central Florida loses a lot of their offensive production. They only bring back 38%. Their defense ranked bottom of P4 last year. and they bring 60% of them back. They have 60th strength of schedule back, and they had a subpar recruiting year. I think they had the 85th ranked recruiting class out of high school and the 44th out of the transfer portal. They have a difficult Big 12 schedule, which leads me to believe they would be at the bottom of this. I think you're looking at like a 3-9, 4-8 season. The future does look like it could be better because they are getting some guys in the class of 2026, but this year it seems more like a down year.
No, I agree. Looking at them right now, they don't have a quarterback. They're returning zero production in the wide receiver room. They're only returning one starter on the defense. They are extremely heavily transfer dependent, and they didn't do that well in the transfer portal. I genuinely think Central Florida could be one of the worst teams in Power Four football. I mean, they're just it's going to be a rough year down there. I don't see it being a very good season though. But luckily with Frost, he's trying to get it going. High school recruiting makes you feel warm and fuzzy, but that can only help you so much. I think you're looking like what you said around the 3-9 mark, maybe even 2-10,
Yeah.
because they're just bad. The next team we have at 15, we're both in agreement on, is Cincinnati. What do you got for old Cincy?
I think this this may be Coach Sat's year where he's coaching for his job. I hate to say that about anybody. With where Cincinnati was before he got there, I feel like that program, if they're not like a 7-8 win team at least, it could be his last. And I feel like if you just look at their roster up and down, they bring a lot back, but they also do not bring a lot in. Which, in terms, you feel like you're going to get a similar result. They're putting money into their program now, but I still think with what they have and the schedule they have in the Big 12, you're looking at a 3-9, 4-8, similar to Central Florida, slightly better. The defense lacked the ability to be able to really stop the run, and I feel like the Big 12 lacks to run the ball more now than what they have in the past. There's not as much throw it around the yard. It's more to just run at your face. I think that'll rough them up a little bit. So I think that's why I got them at the 15th spot.
Yeah, so for me, and this is hard because it's a Satterfield conversation. Scott has built this roster how we know how Scott will build rosters. And they have a very solid offensive line, they have a very solid defensive line, and they have a mobile but turnover prone quarterback. Have you ever heard that story before? That's weird how that happens. Again, we've seen this song and dance. If for Scott, it's one of those things, the way he builds it, he can get hot or it can be really bad, one of the two. What worries me is they lost their three best wide receivers. They lost their starting running back. Sorsby is very turnover prone. I don't see it. They lost three guys from the secondary to the draft, and then they lost their two starting cornerbacks to the portal. It's kind of that recipe for disaster. And it's that thing that we talked about for 4 years. It's just how far can it get you with this sort of roster management and this sort of building? Yes, it's important to value your line of scrimmage, but you also have to have the skill players to go with it. And I don't see it being a very good season for Cincy. And to be completely honest, I think Sat's out of a job this year. Which, if that's the case, wish him the best of luck. Swapping on up to 14, we finally got some differences here. I have Arizona at 14. You have Houston at 14. Why do you have Houston at 14?
Houston's a team that they bring a lot of quality in. They
Uh-huh.
have the 27th ranked transfer portal class, did the 53rd in the high school class. They're a team that are coming off a 4-8 season this past season. They bring a lot of good offensive production as they return 59% of what they had last year, 63% from the defensive side of the ball. So they're a team that's really hard to be able to judge from the outside because they're so new. There's so many new elements because like Connor's going to start. They brought a couple defensive like secondary pieces that are going to start. Um, it's one of those things where you look at a team that's built on transfer portal. It's hard to judge them before like last year's Arizona State. No one could have saw that coming. Um, we don't know how they're going to mesh. Like I had them at 14 now, but like I've told you, like I could see a world where Houston's top 8 in this conference. But right now, I think you're looking more at like a 4-8 again, or 5-7. But it could be as good of a 8-4 and 9-3, depending on how well Connor adjusts to Big 12 ball.
I get that. I get that. For me, the reason, so I have Arizona at 14 because there's only one proven thing on that roster, and that's Fifta, their quarterback. He's a good quarterback. He's a good quarterback. He can sling the ball. He has good legs. The issue being is they had a lot of really good weapons last season on the offense. And they had one of the worst offenses in college football. Now they bring in new coordinators. They bring in Seth Doge at OC, and they got to find production. Last year it didn't show, and just based off their portal acquisitions, especially on offense, I don't know if I believe them so far yet. But they completely overhauled their defensive line also in the portal. And again, their new DC, new OC, their new DC, Danny Gonzalez, he's gonna have to find a way to just get pressure on the quarterback because they were so bad at it last year. Luckily for Arizona, they're returning majority of their secondary. Downside, their secondary wasn't very good last season. I don't see it being a very good year for them. I'm not a fan of their transfer portal acquisitions, and there was a bad ball team last season. But heading on up, we're in agreement again. We got West Virginia at 13. I kind of gave the disclaimer earlier also, West Virginia. If there's a team that's going to over exceed expectations majorly, I think it's West Virginia. But why do you have West Virginia down 13?
It's similar to what we touched on earlier. It's just such a new team. It's Rich Rod's first year, so if they're implementing that scheme, completely new coaching staff. They bring back some talent, as we've touched on, but they just got a tough schedule. And they have the 68th strength of schedule that's relying heavily on a week out of conference because I think they face all the top 5 teams in the Big 12, which could put you automatically, if you lose 4 out of 5 of those, you're already 4-4, so you're looking at 8. So, and with the new team and a lot of transfer portal acquisitions, and they start early with their conference play. I think their first game is week 1. I got them at like 5-7, 6-6 at best. Year 1, it could be exceeded, but as of today, I say it's between them and Houston on who could exceed this projection.
No, I agree. No, we did hit on them quite a bit earlier. We've seen the Rich Rod system work in modern college football. We saw it work very well at Jacksonville State. I mean, it could work here in the Big 12, especially with it being such a unique system to what the Big 12 is used to. If it works, it looks like the prettiest thing in the world and it works very well. If it doesn't work, it looks horrible. But we'll move on up to 12. And again, another little difference. You have Arizona at 12. I have Oklahoma State. Why do you have Arizona at 12?
Similar reason to why you had them at 14. It's just the only proven commodity they have is FIFA. They're a very new team. I feel like you can pretty much lump like spots 10 to 14 and kind of just move them wherever you want. They're all similar issues where they're just not proven. It's hard for me to put too much stock in them. Like, it's the mesh, and the quantity and quality doesn't match. Like, they might bring in a couple guys, but they're losing a lot.
Mhm.
Specifically, let's say, this. They only bring back 41% of that defense, which, as we've stated, their defense wasn't great last year.
Yeah.
But they also don't bring back much to replace that. They had the 52nd best transfer portal class and the 50th best offensive class, and they more so touched on the offensive side of the ball with their transfer portal acquisitions than they did their defense, which hopefully improves the offensive side of the ball. But I don't think it really helps what caused you to be 4-8 last year as much.
No, we already heard my Arizona spiel, and I kind of agree with you. By the way, if I were to talk like about the Big 12 rankings here, I have four major categories for them. So I have five and above. That's a group, and then there's a drop off between 6 to 10, and then a major drop off from 10 to 14, and then 14 and below is just some of the worst teams in Power Four football. That's the way I look at it, and that's kind of the thing with this league. It's just there's so much parity. But the reason I have Oklahoma State at 12, Gundy, very bad year last year. His worst year, I believe, at Oklahoma State last season, if I'm not mistaken. They're in full rebuild mode. They're bringing in 39 guys via the portal. They still haven't announced a starting QB, which in going into July, I do not like. Both guys competing for the role. They've yet to throw a pass in a live football game. That's what you're looking at quarterback. Green, brand new guy. There's not a single returning starter on the offense, which might be a good thing, might be a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. The defense looks to be in a little bit of better shape, though. They brought in linebacker Brian McCoy from Akron. He's a pretty good player. And they're returning a lot of key pieces in the secondary. No one really knows what the offense is going to look like because it's so new and fresh, but we have a pretty decent idea on what the defense will look like. If the defense is a little bit better, if they can bring their like points per game down below 28, I think they could be solid, maybe 4 or 5 wins, but it's so hard to tell because that offense is just so unknown, I guess
Yeah.
is the best way to look at it. Moving on up though, I got Colorado at 11, and you have TCU at 11. I'm gonna speak a little bit on Colorado, and then I'm gonna let you go on TCU if you don't mind.
You're good.
For Colorado, the reason I have them at 11, so the Colorado conversation is going to be a hard one. Dion is Dion. Okay, we know what we're going to get out of a Dion team. They're extremely talent heavy, but the biggest question is, do they have the poise down the season? They're going to look amazing weeks 1 to 4, and then that's going to be some of the worst looking football you've ever seen by week 9. Caden Slater, he's a really good option at quarterback. I really, really like him. He did amazing things at Liberty. The question remains, though, at the offensive line, and it always has been with Colorado. They have the talent. They bring in the guys from the portal. They bring in guys from high school. They bring in top level talent at the LOS. But there's always that lack of cohesion at the offensive line. For the defense, they lose a lot in the secondary to the draft. I don't think anyone else needs. I mean, everyone knows. But they bring in some quality guys to fill those roles, man. They brought in a really good, really solid guys out of the portal. And again, they have the talent from the high school recruiting to be able to refill. The defensive line, it seems to be the strength on this roster right now. And it's probably their most talent rich room on the team. They got Jaheim Otis and Samuel Okolona. The biggest question, though, for their defensive line, and this is kind of, this is my nerd football talking. They run that hybrid 4-2-5. And with their hybrid role, they used to run it a lot through guys in the secondary. Can they transition that hybrid role into a linebacker? And that's gonna be the cause of that's gonna be if Colorado is a good team or not. If you have Travis Hunter running that hybrid role, they're solid. You don't got Travis Hunter anymore. But why do you have TCU at 11?
TCU is a weird team. Like I feel like you can kind of pigeonhole them to a similar spot to where I have Kansas State, BYU, which I'll touch on that. The reason that I have them this low is simply due to the fact that they have, if you can argue, the toughest conference schedule out of any of these teams. They have the 35th nationally ranked strength of schedule, and they have a weaker out of conference schedule than the others. That shows you how tough their in conference schedule is. Their high school class was actually probably better. It's been in years past. They had a 24th ranked high school class. You probably won't see much of that because they do bring them back a lot. 63% on the offensive side, 78% on the defensive side. Transfer portal wise, they didn't bring much in. They bring a lot back on their offense, though, in particular of production as they bring back their quarterback who really had a good bowl game. I just feel like it's not as much that they're going to be a bad team or a down year. I feel like they're victims of the schedule. I feel like a lot of their tougher games are away from Texas, and I feel like that can hurt them. I think you're looking at like floor 5-7, ceiling 7-5 for this season for them. Probably about 3-5 in the conference.
All right, I get that. We're gonna move it on up in the world. We're gonna go up to 10, and we got another disparity. We pretty much have disparities for the rest of the way here. So I see one more where uh, we're on the same wavelength. But at 10, I have Houston at 10. You have Utah. Now, Houston, I'm going to do the Houston talk because you did your Houston talk
Yeah.
already. Fritz is a winner. All right. He's won everywhere he's been. And it looks like he's getting Houston there. We talked a lot about Wegman. I think Wegman is going to work at Houston. I think playing in a slower league, I think playing smaller college football is going to do Wegman a heck of a lot of favors. The biggest issue, though, or I'm sorry, we'll keep going with the good stuff. We'll do the good stuff till we do the bad stuff. We'll gas them up a little bit and then tear them down. They're returning 2 really good wide receivers, and they brought in some guys from the portal that I really like. They brought in Amari Thomas. They brought in Harvey Broussard, and that's going to make their wide receiver room a really solid room. They're bringing in Tanner Koisel at tight end, and that doesn't hurt either. Tanner Koisel, he's a very solid tight end, Ball State guy. Louisville fans, you know enough about him. They rebuilt their offensive line, and that should help a lot. Defensively, they gotta fill a lot of holes. They lost guys like AJ Halsey, Jeremiah Wilson. Those are some of the top transfer portal guys in the country that they lost, and they're very good players. And if they can find a way to do that and really, really replace some of that talent that they lost in the portal on the defense, they should be a very solid unit. But this is all about the offense this season for them. They very well could have the best offense in the Big 12. If Wegman plays with his mind in between his ear, he could be a very strong standout, and he could honestly throw the ball for 3,500 yards, in my opinion.
I agree. His issue is going to be keeping the ball thrown to his team.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Utah, you got Utah at 10. What are we looking at?
Utah's finally going to have a new quarterback.
Finally, Cam Rising, he's
Um,
working at
the
Enterprise.
issue with that's part of my why I had them down here. There are teams that this is the first season where you're going into the spring knowing that who your quarterback's going to be or a rough idea of who it is. The only issue is you got lack of like reps at that position, and it's in a season where you know how these conferences do their schedule. It's kind of a rotating. You get to play this difficult schedule this year. You get an easier one. They had the second roughest schedule nationally in the conference this year. Like they had the 30th nationally ranked strength of schedule. They actually did rather well on both the transfer portal and high school recruiting sides of things. 37 on transfer portal, 43rd high school. The only issue is they didn't really specify what they were going after, and I feel like they didn't fill all the holes. Like they did enough that I think that they'll make a bowl, but I think you're really looking at like a 6-6, 7-5 season if the quarterback is able to like go get through his rough patches or at an early on point near the non-conference. I feel like you could break through to the top six. But I think you're more likely looking at like the bottom five, bottom eight of this conference.
Okay, okay. I just want to point out here, so we're going into category. I don't know if you agree with me, but I see a pretty big difference between 9 and 10 on this list. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's a pretty big drop off there from 9 to 10. So at 9, I have Kansas, and you have Baylor.
yeah.
Why do you got Baylor at 9?
It's a simple thing. I try not to harp on it, but it does matter. And the strength of schedule is a big thing on it. But Baylor lost a lot of defensive production. They lost Corey Gordon to us, and he was a big part of that secondary last year. They had a bunch of production graduate. They lose 35% of their defensive production, 28% of their offensive production on that 8-5 team from last year. And they focus more on the line of scrimmage, which in modern Big 12 football may benefit them. But I feel like there's clear weaknesses in their secondary, and their wide receiver room seems a little thin. Um, I think that can hurt them as the year goes on. So I feel like that's why I have them. Like I still think they're a level above the 10 spot, but I feel like you're looking at like a 7-5 team. But there's a lot of promise in the future for this team.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Big reason why I have Kansas at 9. I just want to point this out. I think Kansas has the best offensive line in the entire league. Like they are returning multiple all conference guys. They have a very solid offensive line. I think the defensive line is really, really good also. This is kind of the inverse of the Cincinnati conversation that I had. I think they really good line of scrimmage. The best part for them though, they have Jalen Daniels. He's got to stay healthy. And I think they do have guys in the skill positions on offense where they can muster up something. You know, like I said, it's very similar to Cincy. It's just I feel like Kansas has better guys. The biggest question mark though for Kansas is they got 7 new guys in the back half of the defense, and that is a real, real question mark for them. If they can really simplify their game and they can do what they want to do, they can run the ball, they can move the ball forward in short game situations, and they're able to consistently get pressure with that veteran defensive line. This could be a ball team that, could win 8, 9 games. But as of right now, I have them more than 7-5, 6-6 mark, personally. I just one of those things I just need to see it, you know.
Yeah.
Moving on up to 8, you have BYU, and I have TCU. Your BYU pick, that's a little spicy. I kind of want to hear a little bit about that.
BYU is a team I got to touch on. Like, traditionally, they're a team that's very up and down. Like one season they'll win 9 or 10 games and be pushing for a New Year's Six. Then the next year they'll be playing in the Military Bowl. I feel like this is a year where the schedule's a little bit more difficult. They lose 47% of their defensive production from last year, which I feel like was very strong last year in aiding them into their 11-2 record. And they had a very poor transfer portal class. They had the 85th transfer portal class in the country. They bring up a lot of their offensive production. All their main pieces are back, but I feel it's going to be a situation where their offense is not going to be able to keep up with what their defense is going to allow, because it's going to be a very young defense. I feel more so they'll be behind. They could start 0-3 in the conference with how difficult their conference schedule is. Because I touched on, they play Texas Tech on the road, they play Iowa State on the road, and they go to Arizona State.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't given the best of chances, because their three hardest games in conference, you can argue, are all away from home.
Mm-hmm.
And 5-3 may put you at this 8th spot. But as well, it may well, if you're able to get one of those, you could see them up in the top 4 again. The Big 12 is really hard to predict because one game could take you from mid-conference to the top of the table.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue that we're seeing in modern college football with these 16 plus team conferences. It's a nightmare. I mean, and also I don't want to get off track, but we just saw yesterday news come out they're not doing a preseason poll for the Big 12 anymore
Mm-hmm.
after they all got embarrassed last season with Arizona State. But I could see it with BYU. I could see it. It's a difficult schedule. I just think they're a really good ball team, man. But I'm gonna talk more about BYU later. I got TCU at 8, and TCU again. It's gonna be the kind of the theme of this video is 9-1 could realistically one game goes a different way and they could be in a completely different spot. With TCU, I think it's a difficult conference slate for TCU personally, but you're returning Josh Hoover, and Josh Hoover is one of the best passers in the Big 12. I think statistically last year he was the best passer in the Big 12. They rebuilt their entire wide receiver room, and they brought in Jordan Dyer. I already talked about him earlier, but one of the best receivers in FCS last season. They have to get the run game online, though, because last year they were awful at running the ball. They have to figure out a way to do it. They added some guys in the running back room. They added some guys on the offensive line to try to help that. And that's really the big thing with them is down the stretch, late in the season, they were just getting worn down by teams, and they were not able to consistently move the ball 4 to 5 yards. So if they can fix that, they're going to be looking good. Defensively, I think they look to be in a really good spot. They're returning all Big 12 safety, Bud Clark, and they're returning Jamel Johnson. The safety room looks great. It's one of the better linebacker cores in the Big 12, I would argue. They're returning Nabdi, and I'm going to butcher his name, I always do. Nabdi Ohuba Azor, and they're bringing in all Pac-12 linebacker Caleb Elam's-Orr. Now, all Pac-12, whatever. There's only 2 teams in the Pac-12. But that's nice to see. The D line, they look to be a solid unit also. They're returning a freshman All-American, Zach Chapman. Like, the defense looks to be very solid. You have a really good quarterback. It's just, you got to be able to run the ball in this conference. And in major college football, you have to be able to run the ball. If they can run the ball, I can very realistically see Kansas being in like that 3 or 4 slot. I'm sorry. If they can run the ball, I could very easily see TCU being in that 3 or 4 slot. So that's just kind of my way I look at it. They have all the tools there. They just have one major question mark, and it's an easy question mark to remedy. And it looks like they've tried to get the remedy from the transfer portal.
I know we're going
to. James, you just came with me with an alteration. You want to move 5 and 6? We'll allow it. Going on up to 7, though. So at 7, you have Kansas State, which is, again, another little bit of a hotter take on this list. Why do you have Kansas State at 7?
They bring back a lot of production. They bring back 71% of their offensive production, 63% from their defense. They were 9-4 last season. They had a good recruiting class. I've been harping on strength of schedule. They do have the toughest schedule in the conference. They're the 24th ranked out of strength of schedule in the country. They started off hot too. They get Iowa State early. This prediction could be very wrong very fast if they win week 0.
Yeah.
But they have quality at the offensive position. Avery Johnson has a chance, if he has the time, to be a Heisman candidate with his style of play. But like I said, it's one game. And as a conference like this, it's hard to being set predicted to be seventh isn't a detriment to you because you win week 0, you're top 3 because I have Iowa State at 1.
Hmm.
They're a very good football team. I think this is where you creep into 7, 5, 8, and 4. I had BYU at 7 and 5, so I think you get into a decent bowl here, and if you keep up the way you've been recruiting and you're able to keep some pieces from entering the portal, you could be pushing for a top 3 in 26. But this year, I got you at 7.
Okay. So I'm taking Utah at 7. And Utah is that team. I think last year everyone was like, oh, Utah's going to the Big 12. They're going to win the Big 12 every year. And I even think Big 12 or Utah fans felt that also. They're like, this is our conference. We've been dominating the Pac 12. We're going to dominate the Big 12. Big 12 is a lot different than the Pac 12. Whittingham, he's a hell of a coach. And he's gonna try to throw that Utah weight around in the conference. Utah's one of the better position schools in the Big 12, in my opinion. They got a new OC. They got Jason Beck, and they're finally kind of like what we talked about earlier. They're bringing in a new quarterback, Cam Rising. He's not there. They're bringing in Devin Dampier. Dampier came with Beck from New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. Dampier is a true dual threat. The kid is, I would argue, better with his legs than he is in the air.
Can I add something to this while you're speaking
Yeah,
on
yeah,
Dampier?
yeah.
If you haven't seen Dampier, go back and watch him versus Arizona's defense last year. If you want to know what kind of quarterback you're getting, watch that. I'm pretty sure he threw for like 200 plus yards in the first half.
Yeah. He can do it all. It's very, and I hate especially making comparisons like this because this is a little bit ridiculous comparison. But it's very Lamar Jackson esque in college. It is very. He is or Utah. They're bringing in a veteran running backs through the portal, and that's only going to help them to run the ball. They have a very veteran and very seasoned offensive line. I think they're gonna try to run the ball down people's throats because they have the dudes to do it. I mean, at the end of the day, with Utah recruiting, they've just out recruited everyone else for the past 5 years. And obviously they were in the Pac-12 for majority of that. But if you got dudes, you got dudes, and I think Utah has dudes. Defensively, they're kind of reloading. It's a new defense. They have very talented underclassmen, but they said they have upperclassmen in the important positions. Landon Barton and Levani Damuni in the linebacker room. Those are going to be the guys your defense is going to be run through. And luckily, they're both kind of seasoned guys. They're upperclassmen. They're going to be the heart of the defense. Everything's going to go through them. On paper, I think this is going to be a very solid defensive unit. It's just you got to have a little bit of time to see if the unprovenness works out. And I think it will. Utah, I think you're in that 7-5, 8-4 range. Just give it time, and I think they will be consistently winning the Big 12. Not this season, but maybe 2 years down the road. I can't bet against Whittingham after what I've seen him do in the Pac-12. I can't do it. But this year is not yet the year. All right. So now we're moving up to 6. A pretty big discrepancy here. I have Oklahoma State down at 12. You have them up at 6.
I'm Colorado here.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I saw that. I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah. My bad artwork there. So you have Colorado at 6, and I have them at 11. That's still a pretty big discrepancy.
Yeah.
I have Baylor at 6, and you have them at 9. That's a pretty big discrepancy as well. Why do you have Colorado at 6?
Colorado is a team that, like we've spoke on, they're very talent heavy. They're probably, if you look at their roster top to bottom, they may have the most talent on a roster in the whole conference.
I believe they have the highest BCR in the Big 12.
Yeah, their poise is to be questioned a lot, but I feel like we know what Dion is. Week 1 to 4, you could see them 4-0. I think you're looking at a team, and as I predicted, like looking at a team that's gonna be 7-5, 8-4 range still there. But I feel like this is a year that it's a down year. There's not going to be as much hype around this team. But I also think with how competitive this conference is, I feel like they're solid in that 6th spot just due to the talent alone. They bring in Salter from Liberty. They bring in a 5-star quarterback also. I don't think you see him play at all much this year. I think it's Caden's job to lose. I feel like they lose a lot of their wide receiver room. I don't know if they bring any of that room back. They only bring back 44% of their offense and 55% from their defense, but they reloaded and then some. 38th ranked high school class and 19th ranked transfer portal class. I feel like they did pay really close attention to what they needed. They lack depth though, which is why I can't put them in top 5. But this is one of those years where you're gonna really get an idea of what Dion at Colorado can be post Shador. Can he hang with the top half of the conference, or does he start to fall behind?
No, I agree, and again we talked about it quite a bit. For me at Baylor at 6, so Dave Arnada, he was on the hot seat last season. His seat was hot. He weathered the storm though. He did. And the big thing for him is he kept telling people down in Waco, he said, "Give me my time, give me my time, give me my time. Let me build the roster my way." He's built the roster his way. They returned in 8 offensive starters. And I really think, man, their quarterback, Sawyer Robinson, he's one of the most slept on quarterbacks in the country also, man. He has the tools to be a hell of a quarterback, and he showed it last season. You know, they're returning a very solid running back room with the likes of guys like Bryson Washington. I mean, these are things that you want to see out of a team competing for a conference. Returning 4 of the 5 O line, and it was a very stout room last year. It wasn't a bad room. It wasn't a great room, but it was stout. Defensively, though, this team was awful last year. They were absolutely awful on defense, and they're looking to improve that. They brought in some guys. They brought in Calvin Sampson Hunt, Devin Turner, Travis, and Travion Barnes. So they're trying to retool the defense. The offense looks like it's in a good spot. If they can keep teams from scoring under 28 points, they could do something here. But again, and it's sort of a trend here in the Big 12. Very good offenses. You have to find a way to stop them on defense, and that's a big thing for Baylor. But we're going to move on up to 5, and I want to point out in my rankings, I have a pretty big drop off here. From 1 to 5. This is kind of the drop. I think once you get to like 5 and above, you're looking at like realistic college football playoff teams from their auto bid.
I think mine's 1 to 4.
Is yours 1 to 4?
Yeah.
All right, so you got Oklahoma State at 5. Why you got that?
Mine's very heavily is I like what they brought in on the transfer portal side of things. I think they brought in quality. They also got Darius Thomas. Little fans know Darius. He came from Western. You touched on some other additions they had earlier when you ranked them. They're a team that I feel like Gundy is in a spot where he knows he has to show this year. Last year was the worst year he's had in his 20-year time at the school. And I feel it's more going to be a pride thing. And I feel like he has a schedule to be able to do it. He has the 67th ranked strength of schedule in the country. He avoids a lot of the top 4 teams in the conference on his schedule, so he has a more friendly side of that too. So I feel like it's gonna be less that the team's that great, which is why I can't put them top 4 because I don't think they're gonna be pushing for a playoff spot. But I feel like schedule wise and just Gundy knows how to win football games, and I know we don't know who their quarterback is right now, but he's had situations like that in the past, and he's won 10 games. So it's more so history has a way of repeating itself, and I have Gundy winning 8 games this year.
Okay. No, I think it. I can see it. I think the biggest difference in you and I is the unprovenness scares me. You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. For me, we got a pretty big discrepancy. I have your conference winner at 5, which is that says a lot. The reason I have Iowa State at 5. Last year, they were absolutely derailed by injuries. They had injuries. They had some serious injury issues, but they still made it to the Big 12 title game. Rocco Beck returns as quarterback. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the conference. They're losing their 2 best wide receivers to the draft, and they replaced them in the portal with some pretty good guys, I feel like. They brought in Chase Sal from ECU. He was a really good guy, and they brought in Xavier Townsend. They had production in every single part of the tight end room. Every guy in the tight end room had production last year. And I think really the tight end room is going to be a major point of emphasis in the offense. And, I just think it's a good room on the offensive line. They're returning 106 combined starts. That is an amazing number. That's one of the better numbers in the country, let alone the Big 12. On defense, they just have to get to the quarterback. They only had 17 sacks last year on 14 games. That's atrocious. That is just absolutely atrocious in every word. They went out though. They spent money. They spent Iowa State level money on the defensive line, and then all their other position groups they return value, production on defense. I think they made the Big 12 title game last year with a lot of injuries. I think a lot of that was a lot of luck, in my opinion. And I just don't think luck is a sustainable thing, to continue to build off of. I think again they have a solid looking offense, but I need to see them get pressure to the quarterback on defense. If they can do that, then they're going to jump up this list. But right now, I have them at 5, and also I don't think they win in week 0.
And at 4, I think we both go to the state of Kansas, just opposite sides.
Do you want to talk about a little bit about Kansas?
I can. So I've touched on how high I am on Kansas. They bring a lot of their offensive production back. I think Lawrence Arnold may be, if not the best receiver in this conference, he's top 3 easily. Eagles, when he's healthy, you can't argue that he's a top 3 quarterback in this conference. I think we can both agree that our offensive line is just a tier above the second best offensive line in the conference. I'm pretty sure they bring three solid guys back. The one thing I can say about them is why I couldn't go no higher than 4. They bring a lot of their secondary. They're all being replaced, so it's hard to put too much stock in. Just you haven't seen those guys together. But I feel like this conference, if you look over it, the defenses are very. We need to see what they can prove. And I think if you look at the opposite side of the ball, Kansas has a top 3 offense, if not a top 2 offense in this conference. And we've all already seen that. And if they can stay healthy, they could push for a conference championship. So I think this is your first one where I have a ceiling of 8-4, 9-3.
Yeah, I mean, like I said again, and it's kind of it's the highlighting of our rankings. It's just unproven production. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It can cost you a game or two, and again, in this league, a game or two is the difference between 3rd in the league and 10th in the league.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm going Kansas State at number 4. Like I said, I think they win that week 0 matchup. As of recording, I think they are the odds-on Big 12 favorite on like DraftKings. I think that sounds right. I don't have them winning the conference though, personally. They got guys all across the field. They got Avery Johnson, Dylan Edwards, Joe Jackson, Jace Brown. I mean, the list just keeps going on and on and on. There's one major question on the offense though, and that is the offensive line any good? Man, you can have skill positions for day. If your offensive line can't give Avery Johnson, 3 seconds, you're not going to be a good football team. They're starting unproven tackles. They're starting a new left guard, and the unit is just they don't have any playing time together. There's a lot of things I can deal with uncertainty with. Offensive line play is not one of those, especially when you're replacing major positions on your offensive line, like your tackles and your left guard. And the nice thing here for Kansas State, once we start talking a little bit about the defense, I think they have one of the best I think they have one of the better D lines in the country. Okay. They have a very, very good D line. Does it compete with the SEC? Does it compete with some of these units we see in the ACC, like Clemson? Not really, no. But for the Big 12, it's good enough. The linebacker room is also solid. They're solid to boot. They're not top 25 good. They're not a national power, but they're a good program. They're a good squad for the Big 12. The secondary is very unproven, though. They're returning a single guy in the secondary, VJ Payne. And just, you have some serious questions at the offensive line and in the secondary. Those are things in good faith I can't get behind. If you didn't have those questions, I would pick you number 1. Like, undoubtedly. You'd probably be one of the top 12 teams in the country. You'd probably be preseason top 12. But you have those major question marks. And just offensive line and secondary are 2 things you just cannot play with in this league. It is a very fickle line. So that's why I have them at 4. But we're in agreement on number 3, which is Nice to see. We got Texas Tech, and this is a fun conversation. Let's hear your Texas Tech thing.
The Texas Tech's a team that they were pretty good last year. Like they were in every game they lost. Like I think all their losses were they were led at one point in the second half. They bring a lot back. They're able to get Micah back from Texas A&M. That's a defense. I feel like where they're going to thrive, and it's very odd, which could help them win this conference. I think they're going to have the best defense in this conference. I think offensively, they have the weapons to be able to be a top three offense in this conference. I feel like you between them, Kansas, and probably Iowa State are going to be your top three, with Arizona State falling behind in terms of offensive production. I feel like their schedule is what they had a 28th strength of schedule, and they get a lot. They have to face all the top six in this conference that we got. The only issue, the thing that favors them though, is they get them at home, and that's an environment in Lubbock that can create some issues, especially for some of these young offenses and young players. I feel like they're just a step below my top two. I feel like Texas Tech's a team that is going to be a problem for years to come in this conference.
I agree. I think honestly, the Brennan Morton, their quarterback, he is a serviceable game day manager, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but that's the way I see him. Serviceable game day manager. The wide receiver room is absolutely loaded, though. I mean, they're bringing in Reggie Vigil. They're returning Caleb Downs. Like it is a loaded wide receiver room. The offensive line brought in some massive talent. They brought in Howard Sampson, Will Jados, and Hunter Zambrano. It's going to be a good offensive line if they can gel. Again, you go to the defense, or I'm sorry, the running backs. Also, the running back room looks phenomenal. They brought in Quentin Joyner. They brought in Taj Brooks. Like, these are guys that like top transfer portal kind of guys at their position group. And then they have a new defensive coordinator, Shield Woods, and he's returning his most key piece, which I talked about a little bit earlier, Jacob Rodriguez. The one thing I will say, and I don't mean to sound bad when I say this, but Joey McGuire, head coach for Texas Tech, welcome to new territory, buddy. You are now a part of the group of head coaches similar, Ryan Day, Lane Kiffin, Jeff Brom, Mario Cristobal, these high NIL portal type of coaches. Your leash gets a lot shorter when you do this, when you have this sort of booster investment into your program. It gets a lot shorter, and your expectations rise a lot. If you don't meet your expectations, you're going to have a lot of upset boosters. And those boosters, the people giving you money, they'll take that money away and they'll make sure you don't have a job. So if you're in this situation, it's a very boom or bust that you're doing here at Texas Tech. It works for certain programs. We've seen it work very well for Louisville. We've seen it work very well for Ole Miss. Miami, then they have Mario Cristobal issues. Um, so if I'm Texas Tech, you got to win 8 games. You have to do it. You got to win 8 or 9 games, and you got to do it this year. But I think they do. I think they win probably 8 games. They're fine. But if this goes south, that's a rough off season. That's a very rough off season in Lubbock. We'll move on up in the list though. So we're at 1 and 2. These theoretically are two teams playing for the conference championship. We both have one single team together. Then we're both different on another. Let's just talk about both these teams at first. Let's talk about your conference championship first.
So my conference championship, I think it's a rematch of the one they had last year, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. It is.
They both bring back so much. I think Rocco's the best quarterback in this conference. I think Jalen has the most potential, but I think Rocco's that guy that he just it seems like no matter how many times he gets hit, he just gets back up. They they have a proven staff. They're there constantly. I think they've been to the conference championship 2 of the last 4 years. They're one of those guys that if I'm going to put money on them, they bring back 90% of their offensive production, 81% of their defense. They bring the most back of any team in this conference. So they know how to win. They're defending Pop Tart Bowl champions. Had to get that in there.
Hey man, it counts for something.
They beat Miami. So there's a team that I feel like if there was a team that has proven themselves to be in this spot, it'd be them. Just because I feel like they bring back majority of everything and they replace what they needed to replace. You touched on the receivers they brought in. That's quality receivers, and they got them early. Like they got them like day 1 or 2 of the fall portal. I feel like their skill positions allow Rocco some flexibility on what he can do, and I love the way they utilize their tight ends up there. Um, that's all I want to talk about with them. Arizona State's a team you just can't. They bring back so much. They have a Heisman contender in their quarterback. Their wide receiver room may be the best, if not the best. It's definitely top five in the conference. Their defense brings back a lot of opportune players. There's some weaknesses in that secondary. There's a little bit of unproven nature in that defense. They lose 21% of it, but they bring back a lot. That's a common theme between these two teams. They both bring back a lot of production from last year's teams, and both of these teams won 11 games last year. I think you're looking at both of these teams a similar record. I think I have them both slotted at 8-4, 9-3, with a chance at 10-2. I just feel like Iowa State's a team that you're going to see as early as week 0 that's just not going to miss a step. I feel like Arizona State may take a couple weeks to get in the flow of things without Scatabo.
Yeah, so for me, I got Arizona State BYU. I got Arizona State winning the league. You know, last year you had the magical CFP season from Arizona State. And I think they're going to do it again. You're returning everyone on the offense with the exception of left guard and Scatabo. And on defense, you're returning everyone except for your defensive tackle and a nickel back. Sam Levitt, we talked about it. He's a serious Heisman contender. You know, if I can say one nice thing about the Big 12, Sam Levitt is a serious Heisman contender. He was phenomenal last season. He's going to be phenomenal again this season. They got weapons around him everywhere you look. They have a very, very good O-line unit. I mean, you look at this Arizona State roster, it is Big 12 all-conference guys, every single position group that you look at, it seems like. Obviously, they're going to have to return a lot of production from Scatabo. They have a very capable backup, though, from Scatabo. Kyson Brown, he was very good. And guess what they did? They went to the portal. They took Army's 1,000-yard running back, Kanye Udo. It's one of the better defenses in the country on paper. I mean, it is. Again, you just look, it's all Big 12 preseason guys as far as you can see on the defense as well. They're not going to let you throw the ball. They're not going to let you run the ball. Expectations are very high. I think even if they sleepwalk through the conference, they go 9-3. You know, and I think this is by far and away the best team in this conference on paper by a mile. For BYU, again, they're projected to be a very capable team. I've seen some preseason rankings have them like that top 20, top 15 range. They're not going to surprise anyone this year. Everyone knows what BYU is, okay? They're returning a very, very good roster. They have Jake Retzlaff at quarterback. I know there's been a little bit of controversy with him recently, and he might miss a few games going into the season due to their what's it called, their honor code or whatever they do at BYU due to some personal issues. But you have Chase Roberts, wide receiver. We talked about him. LJ Martin, a running back. They're all returning guys. It's going to be a very balanced offense. They're going to do a nice 50-50 split, and they're just going to consistently move the ball 4 yards a play. On defense, they're only returning. So, okay, sorry. The only little issue for the offense is they're only returning one starter in the offense. If they can gel quickly, they can give Ratzliff the time of day. It's going to be a very solid offense. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be pretty, but it's going to be very solid and very, very productive. Defensively, the only real question marks are at cornerback. The linebacker room, it's the linebacker room is the rock of the room. They're returning Jack Kelly. The defense is going to run through him. At cornerback, though, you're losing a lot of production. You're bringing in guys via the portal. If you can get that transition there and you can really just run a solid defense, it's just going to be a solid team. It's not going to be flashy. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be traditional football, and they're just good at it. If they can play solid defense, man, they'll make the comp. They can really compete with Arizona State. But that's what I got. So yeah, I think that's going to do us up though on our rankings. Unless you have anything else to add, James.
I just want to touch on this while we're on the rankings.
Okay.
Based on what we've talked about, if I asked you who you thought had the top 3 highest ranked high school recruiting rankings this year in this conference, who would you say?
For 26 or for 25? Oh, for 25, I'd probably say Colorado, Utah, and BYU.
Okay, so you ready to be shocked?
Yeah.
3 on that list is BYU.
Okay.
Second on that list is Colorado.
Okay.
TCU is
TCU.
14 spots ahead of Colorado.
I knew
With the
TCU was doing
24
good
Tigers.
things. I knew they were doing good things. I didn't know they were doing that good of things.
Yeah, I
That's
saw
pretty
that. I
cool.
said we gotta give them a shout out for
Yeah.
that.
Oh, that's good. That's good for them. But so we're going to kind of transition now. James, we're rounding up the video here. Before I let you go, though, before we roll that beautiful end credit scene, give me 2 hot takes about the Big 12 conference this season.
Okay, my first hot take is Colorado will finish outside of the top 5 in the conference. It's not a hot take between us, but on a national scale, some people may disagree on that. I feel like me trying to be generous, I can't put them above 6. My second one, this one's one that may get some looks. I believe no Big 12 team will surpass 10 wins in the regular season. So whoever wins the conference championship will not get that 10th win until the conference championship.
Yeah, if you ask me one right now, I'm kind of in line with your no team over 10. Again, this isn't me trying to poo poo on the Big 12. This isn't me trying to be mean. It's just, I think this is the weakest of the Power Four conferences by a wide margin. Realistically, I think this conference only sends one team to the college football playoff, and it looks very similar to last year, where it's like, hey, we better not hope Boise goes 12-0 because we could be in a situation, for a Tulane or a JMU, someone like that, God forbid. I think they only send one team. I don't think it's a particularly good conference. I think it's going to be a lot of 8-4, 9-3 type of teams. Kind of like what you said.
Yeah.
I just think that Arizona State, they have the legs where they could go like an 11-1, 11-1, 10-2. But it's going to be it. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to round it out. It's going to be a fun conference to watch. They do more the late night thing, which is fun now. I just don't. So here's my barometer. I don't think there's a realistic national championship contender in this conference. And the reason being, and I'm going to say this, we have our whole preview series coming up this week. If you want to be a national championship contender, okay, I have one single question for you. How are you going to score against Georgia? I don't think there's a single team here that can consistently score against Georgia.
Josh, before we close the video, I have 3 things to watch.
All right, let's see them. Let's hear them.
How will Rich Rod fare in the modern Big 12? Which we've touched on previously in here. My second one, how will the Texas Tech transfer portal mesh with their returning production? Because there is such thing, and we've seen it before across the country, where you bring a ton in and you have all this hype, but it just doesn't work. And they're in a situation with the amount of money put into that transfer portal class. If it doesn't work, it may be time for a new staff. It sucks, but that's how the NIL world works. Last one, can Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy capitalize on a strong portal and a weak schedule? And that's going to be a big factor in the future of the NIL put into that program.
Those are all great points. With that, I'm going to round us out. If you watch, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. It means so much to the page. It really, really helps. Send this to your friend. But other than that, we'll catch you up later this week. We have our ACC preview, which is going to be by me coming up. We have our SEC preview, which is going to be me and Brad. Then we have our Big Ten preview, which is going to be me and Max. Also, check out the main page here soon. We will be coming in with our Louisville-centric prediction show. But thank you so much for watching. Please tune back in and have a great day.